Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chat Series. Just so everyone is aware, the session is recorded, so really what that means for you is that this will be available to you again on demand on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. So feel free to watch it again, share it with a friend or a colleague or anyone else you might think would get something out of it. And so with that, I am so happy to introduce to you today Ed Thomas. Welcome, Ed.
Hey, thanks for having me. How are you?
Doing great. I'm jazzed. I'm excited. How about you?
I'm really ready to go. Let's do it.
Good, good. Well, before we get going, let me read your bio just to, get folks acclimated to you and learn a little bit more about you.
Sounds fantastic.
Cool, cool, cool. So Ed earned his Bachelor of Science in Business Finance from Long Beach State and his Master's in Business Administration Leadership from Webster University. He started sales at SmithKline Beecham Corporation, later moving to sales management roles at DEP, Celestial Seasoning, and Twinlab. In 2001, he became Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Remington Health Products, LLC, achieving 40% year-over-year growth. As Vice President of Sales and Business Development at National Beverage Corporation, he launched the LaCroix brand into mainstream retail. He then worked at O.N.E, coconut
That's
water.
right. O.N.E, coconut
O.N.E, yeah,
water. Yep,
it's
that's
very
it.
specifically the
Yep.
dots there. Coconut water, Fairlife, and KeVita. KeVita?
KeVita.
All right,
Yes.
there you go. Guiding these brands to success. Currently, Ed is a Vice President of Sales and National Accounts and eCommerce at Spindrift, managing sales to key retailers and overseeing 40% of the company's revenue and 60% of its profit. Ed lives in San Clemente, California, with his wife and 3 daughters, coaching their soccer and basketball teams and volunteering locally. Ed, thank you so much again for setting aside the time, and it's an impressive bio, and I just can't wait.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me again, and thanks for those kind words. Much appreciated.
For sure. Well, let's just get right on into it. If you could just share a little bit of background about yourself and your experiences before coming to CSULB, that shaped you or made you choose CSULB in the first place.
Well, interesting. My my family is from Long Beach. My grandparents lived about 3 minutes from school. And actually, my grandmother, who recently passed, but she lived in ripe age of 95, actually had a view right into the school from the local condos. So I had a presence there. My mother and stepfather actually went to school. And when I was young, they used to go to class and drop me at the and drop me at the student union to play video games as a kid. I mean, we're talking 10 years old, and I'm hanging out bowling, playing video games, and while they would go to night class one night a week. And so I used to take my bike and ride down the hill before it was all, yes, many years ago. So having family locally and just this kind of indoctrination around the school, although we were in a city, it was almost for me as if we were in a college town. And the school was kind of revolved around that. So it was always kind of on my list, but it wasn't initially my primary. And then over time, as I grew older, I went, that's where I should go to school. And so I did. I chose Long Beach State. I had other opportunities, but I wanted to stay local. And so I did. And it worked out really well for me.
Yeah, and I mean, something to be said about a Long Beach legacy, right?
It is definitely a Long Beach legacy. Additionally, while I was in school, I joined fraternity. I did a lot of things. You'll probably ask me some questions about that, but I was quite active. It's not in my bio, but I was quite
Well,
active.
hey, honestly, that was going to be my next question. Like, what was
Perfect.
your what was your student experience like at
Yeah,
Cal State
so
Long Beach?
it's interesting. You get people that go to Long Beach have, at least when I went to school, and I don't know if it's because it's such a commuter school, they a lot of people, even locally, at times would struggle with that connection to other students unless they were joining clubs. Well, when I rolled into school, I immediately joined a fraternity. I mean, basically the minute I walked on campus, I pledged. And so I joined Sigma Pi. And at the time, um, it still is a good fraternity on campus. And well, not on campus, but you understand what I mean.
Yes.
Because they're not on campuses. But I joined Sigma Pi and spent all my time really connecting through the Greek network. And then that even led to more sports oriented things. So doing intramurals and interfraternity sports. So I stayed quite active that way. And it made for a fantastic experience. In fact, it's too bad you don't have this for people coming to school, because it's something that I would really recommend to any student is they've got to get involved. They can't sit back and say, oh, I'm just going to drive to school, or I'm going to live in a dorm and that's going to be enough. They've got to take an extra step. And if you do, that experience becomes much better.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's, I mean, great advice, and there's still plenty of clubs and organizations that
Absolutely. You don't
do
have to be
things
in a
that.
fraternity to do, yeah, there's a lot of other things. I mentored a young man who was in part of the entrepreneurship club, and he was really engaged in the university. So it's there's lots of opportunities. You just gotta seek them out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so with with the academics, right? You got your
Yeah.
degree in business and in finance. Was your journey, that first step and then those several next steps in your career, was this intentional? Did you always know you wanted to go into this particular industry, or was it something more that you fell into?
I really fell into it. Okay, so there is a story behind it,
Yeah, let's
actually.
hear it.
It's a yeah, you'll go, really? That's how you fell into it. So the previous stepfather I had mentioned, who was going to school and undergrad and finishing up his degree when I was a young man, um, he actually, before I even started in school, got me a job at his local beer distributorship right after I graduated from high school. And so for a summer before I even got on campus, I delivered beer for Budweiser, and I merchandised, and that kind of gave me some interest to know I didn't want to go into the alcohol business.
Ah,
but as I was progressing through school, I was taking on jobs because I paid for my own schooling. And so I worked at a bank, and I delivered pizza for Domino's, and I worked in some restaurants, and you do all these things. And back in the day when you actually had a real job board, this is how old I there was a job board, and there were postings on this job board. I found a job as a merchandiser for SmithKline Beecham, the first company I started in the industry with. And I decided, okay, I should give this a try. Well, I fell into that because of the background I had, and it was quite successful. So much so that back in the day, I don't know, I don't think you do this anymore either, is we used to have job interviews preset on campus, where you would select a company, they would reselect you, and you would get your job interviews. Well, I interviewed with some finance companies, I interviewed with Coke and Pepsi, I interviewed with a lot of big companies, and I got a lot of great offers, but the best offer I got was to stay with SmithKline Beecham. So I ended up doing that. So basically, I have a degree in finance, which is fantastic, especially if you're going to go into sales, but you don't have to be a finance expert to be in sales. So it's very advantageous. And it also helps with just my overall business acumen. So I'm really happy I did settle on a finance degree, but in the end, it's probably used 20% of my time.
interesting. I mean, yeah,
So I fell into it, yes, in a roundabout way.
yeah, it no, makes sense. I mean, and one of the things that, folks whether they're, just starting out in their career, or maybe they're already in already um, in the industry, right? Pursuing their career. You were able to jump around quite a bit,
Yeah.
and take those next opportunities as they came. So, how did you know, and how might one know when it is time to take that next step and maybe move on from one company to the next?
Well, that's a really challenging question, especially for me, because although I was in finance, and although I that impulsive action as a person, as a younger person, I would say I jumped. At times I jumped early, and times I waited too long. So it's a very delicate balance, because I do encourage people to try some things, get a really good base. I was very fortunate. I got a really good training base at SmithKline Beecham, and that has really carried out through my entire career. I still use a lot of the foundation for what I do, and the way I behave and act with others from that training. So I would say, if you don't feel like you're progressing in your career, and you make it well known to your superiors that it's not really working out, which I did. Uh, I took that training, and then I moved on to other opportunities. And I'd say it just kind of depends on your industry. Certain industries, they really frown upon movement, and other industries are okay with it. I'm always fascinated by, in our industry, in consumer packaged goods, which is really how we're defined, is that marketing people can stay in a job a year and a half and move on, and it's not a big deal. But at senior level sales levels, they want you there. Oh, well, 5 years, you're kind of a job hopper. So you really have to tune in to what your industry is, and understand if job hopping at 3 years is job hopping, or if it's just a natural matriculation of where you should go. And so I would say, really understand, once you get into your first and second roles, if it makes sense for you to jump or not. And if it doesn't, then you should be a little more um, meticulous in your research of the company and what you're doing, to make sure you really want to be there. I hope that really kind of answers. I mean, it's so interesting, because in education, you don't really jump around. People get into education, they stay, and you want to tenure yourself, you want to get yourself established, and I get that. But at times, if you pass on that next opportunity, does that change your whole path? And so for me, I think I've done a pretty good job. I also, for me, when I was young, I was 32 when I took my first vice president of sales role. When in my industry is very young, um, and it worked out fantastically. But then once I started having kids, as a male, I took the step back and wanted to spend more time with my kids, coaching and being a part of their lives. So I took a step back in my career, and that's okay. I mean, my wife was working at the time, and then she eventually stopped. Um, but I'm For personal satisfaction, I think that's the other thing too, is it's not just about your career. How do you balance that with quality of life? And certain individuals, they're all pushed towards and driven towards the work, and you start to see other parts of their life suffer. And very rarely can a CEO have a great quality balance of life and run a company. So you have to kind of determine who you are and what you want to be. And I think that also should play into if you want to take those next steps. Because if you have a good quality of life and you're happy with what you have, then maybe you're okay to settle for a while until you need a new challenge. And I think that's the other thing, is if you're looking for a new challenge, it's time. If you start to get bored in your role and you've asked for more, and sometimes you may not have an opportunity to promote. Your boss may be the top level person. You may be in a small organization and you're reporting to the boss, and that's it. That's the highest level it is. So you say, okay, well, I guess I have to explore and do other things, and don't be afraid to do that, especially in those situations.
No, I mean, great advice. I mean, right, it is always going to be situational, but I think that's a good barometer of, when you need that challenge, or when your life dictates that, you know,
Make the
it takes
change.
time. And it can change, right? The
Yeah,
flexibility of that.
absolutely.
Um, Well, in your industry, which you said is a pretty young industry for what it is, um, you know, what is a typical day in your current position? What does a typical day look like? Then also, what does a typical day look like for, when
For
you're
others.
lower on that ladder?
Sure, for others. So I'll kind of walk you through an entry level position in our industry is a bit of a grind. I will say it takes a certain individual. It's a lot of driving. Typically because what people do in our industry is if you're a sales rep and area sales manager, you go store to store and you are pitching, so to speak, your products, your brands, whatever. If you have multiple brands, a single brand, you're pitching those to retail individuals, store managers, and to department managers, and you're making sure that that product's on the shelf. You're making sure that you're building displays. If you're selling beverages or something in a cold environment, you've got to get it into a cold space. So it's a bit of a grind. It's 8 to 10 calls a day, depending on your territory. But once you get through that, which I was fortunate, I was able to get through that grind and do it pretty well, pretty quickly. Then you move into other levels. And I think where the industry gets a lot more fun is if you can get to what we call key accounts. And that's where you're calling on larger customers at their local headquarter level. And that's a lot more fun because it's truly a lot more strategic. You get into other parts of our business. It's not just selling. There is some logistical pieces to it because you're coordinating truckloads of product coming to, so deliveries. At certain levels, there involves some finance because you're responsible for a P&L. So that becomes quite interesting. So it's really, if you can get above that first level, you really get into a much more interesting part of our business, and probably what most people learn in business school. It's truly that. The consumer packaged industry is a great opportunity for individuals to learn. You could learn every regiment of, or every segment of business within our industry pretty quickly and understand it very well because we use it all. I mean, I have a very diversified background. So today, let me jump to what I do today. I have a team that manages major national accounts, anywhere from Walmart to Whole Foods to Trader Joe's, Target, Costco, you name it. We're across the spectrum. Yes, Costco, as we we chatted a
I love
little bit
Costco.
about. And then I also keep some customers myself. So personally, I get to call on Trader Joe's and I get to call on Whole Foods and Sprouts. And I've saved those customers myself because I have some good relationships there I've built over the years, and I enjoy calling those customers. And they're challenging customers, so I also like the challenging ones. But so our team will manage those businesses day to day with those retailers, and a lot of it is it's not necessarily talking to the retailers on a day-to-day basis, but it is coordinating, planning, a lot of strategic planning on what we want to sell them, how much we're going to sell it for, our promotional activity, getting out into stores and making sure what they agree to and what we agree to is actually happening at the retail store, because that doesn't always materialize. A lot of meetings. Everybody wants to chat about it. sometimes they think we're curing cancer and we're just selling sparkling water. But I will say people get used to that. There's always a lot of meetings. Everybody's, oh, we've got to have a meeting, but it's not too bad. And I will say most of our industry doesn't work in a corporate office if you're in sales. I have only spent about a year in a corporate office of my long tenure career. So I've been very fortunate. I'm sitting here in my home at a table. That is my office. And I work out of a small backpack. So it's very, I get on the road, I go see customers, and I spend a lot of time on the road, but not too much. I mean, if you like to travel, it's a great, especially as you work your way up. It's great. You get to go see a lot of different places. And I mean, there's not a lot of places in this country I haven't been. In fact, I only have a few more states I have to visit, and that's mostly been through work. So that's an interesting part because there are retailers everywhere. That is, you know, everybody's got to buy food or drinks or whatever they're purchasing. So that's kind of cool. That's been an interesting piece. And I'd say it gives you don't become wealthy. That is the one thing I will say about consumer packaged goods. If you are even at a high level, you're never going to get wealthy, but you will have a very comfortable living. And if you you do the things the right way, there are opportunities for that for wealth if you're looking for it, but you have to take some risk, much like anything in life. And there are a lot of risky ventures that you can jump into, but there's equity opportunities. So when you see those and you want to take that risk, it is a risk reward piece. So right back to finance.
So you do use that finance.
I do use it more. I am a forecasting guru, as I've been told. That forecasting that I did in college and learned, I will say I'm quite good at forecasting.
Good.
So that finance does kick in. So yes, if people are looking at if people want to get into sales, like, oh, I'm going to do marketing and do finance.
Okay. All right. Good tip.
Yes.
Good tip. Hot tip.
It is a great tip. I would say, yes, it's quite, you don't have to be in an office all the time.
Yeah.
So
how important is networking in your industry? And you know, what are any tips or tricks that you use for yourself when you're networking?
So networking is very key. The position I'm in, I actually have because the gentleman was a peer of mine at One Coconut Water. The prior role I had was from networking when I was at One Coconut Water, getting acquired by PepsiCo. I connected with the gentleman who hired me there, who was the vice president of sales. The role I had at Fairlife was a connection also to One Coconut Water. It's funny, these are all the vice president of marketing who was at Fairlife recommended me for the role I took at Fairlife as well. So connecting and networking with even in your role is actually probably ideal, at least in our industry, because if you can prove yourself and show that you have good value, people want to work with you again. And I would say one of the gentlemen who works for me, he worked for me at Fairlife. So I brought him into Spindrift to work here and even though it's a completely different role, I knew what his capabilities were. So it worked out really well. I've done some side consulting in the past, and actually from people that work for me at a plethora of companies, I placed at a kombucha company. So a separate kombucha company. In fact, it was 7 of them that I placed into different roles. Yes, because they were looking for people, and I said, "Well, I got a guy." As we'd say in New York, I got a guy. So I had a guy and a gal, and I started placing people into roles. So as you build relationships, I would say for me, the networking isn't just being on LinkedIn or in some social site. I'd say build the relationships from a foundational standpoint and make sure you really connect with people on a deeper level, not from a digital level. The digital isn't enough because when people try to connect with me, as an example, on LinkedIn, they'll say, "Oh, I've got this great experience." I'm like, "It's great, but I don't know you." So why would I even think to hire you when I have a network of people that I've worked with over the years that I've built relationships with over time, and I trust them and I know what they're capable of, and there's a lot of opportunities. So I would say make sure if you're networking, do it genuinely, and do it with no thought of return in it for building your relationship. So basically what I mean is don't do it just because you see a person and say, "Oh, I should network with them." You should do it from a genuine standpoint. And if you're just networking to try to connect and not really doing it from a true interest standpoint, people will see through that. And it's really not networking. And so that's would be my wisdom piece, I guess, from age and experience, is that I would try to instill in people is be genuine and make true connections. And that will be something that will materialize later in life for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's authenticity, right? It's good in all
Absolutely.
forms of life, right?
Organic and authentic. Yes. If you can stay that. Well, a lot of people get away from that. It's like we're in a digital age and everything's got to be, well, I connected with that person. Yeah, but what did you connect on? You just sent them a notice and said, I'm connected to you. You know, what real, have you built any type of camaraderie or relationship with that person? They know you. So that's what I would stick to. But it is, as you can see, for me, it has been a very big piece of my life. And if I were to change roles now, I've actually have a lot of people who come to me and say, when you move, call me. I want to come work with you. So especially if I go to a much higher role, they're ready. I mean, and they're all over the place and they have great jobs. I want to come. So, you know, that makes me feel really good about me as a person, as well as just the connections I have with them.
Yeah. Well, then, I mean, also, and going into to kind of the next question, right? It has to do with people management and in your role, right? Managing people. What would you say is, the key to success when you get to a point when you are a manager and you're responsible for employees?
Um, I've always taken the thought of treat people the way you want to be treated. So I start with that. That's always been my basis. And I'm a hard driver. I there's no doubt about it. I am a hard driver, but I'm also very fair, open, and I do care. I mean, anybody. So this is an interesting point I've made over the last couple of weeks. I've never put a person on a performance review. I've managed a lot of people in my life. I've never had to put a person on a performance review. They always know where they stand. And if it's not working out, they know. And then they typically move on. And maybe it's not move on from the company, it may be move on to a different department or a different role. So I would say first, treat people the way they want to be treated. Secondly, be authentic and genuine and you're an organic in the way you treat them. Make sure you get to know them as people. That really helps too to manage and balance how you want to communicate with them. So for me, those are very key elements. And it's interesting because my wife will hear me in the other room with and I'm talking on the phone. What are you doing in there? She'll say, and I go, I'm talking to so and so. Really? Gosh dang, you're loud and your voice. Yeah, because we're having fun. We're chatting it up. We're having a good time. It's good. It's fun. We're having a good time. And she's like, really? And these guys all want to work for you? So, and she was in sales, but her approach is much different. It's just kind of somber and she's a pretty boisterous person too, but it's just very interesting. What you hear from one side on a phone call may not be the reality of what is going on. So I do say I'm very happy with where I am now for sure in my career, where I am with relationships. And that is how I want to continue to treat people really well as best I can. So
That's great. Yeah. Well, I have a two-part question. It's probably one
oh,
of my favorite questions, so I ask it every time. And so the first part is, what is the most challenging part of your job?
the most challenging part of what I do, and it's been like this for a long time, is it's actually having the patience. This is having the patience to work with our senior leadership. That is probably the hardest job because now where I am in my career, I've already done a lot of their jobs. So having the patience to watch them take a path that may not be the right path at times, I believe, for our organization. I think that's my biggest challenge at this point. I can close customers. I can get in and make things happen from a sales perspective. It's more on the, just in general, keeping my mouth shut and letting them do what they do because they're in those roles. So I think that's my biggest challenge today.
Okay. All right.
And it's kind of been a challenge for me all the way along. Um, when you embrace business and understand the basics, you see a lot of things that need to be fixed, and companies have a lot of things to be fixed. If they didn't, we wouldn't have all these people working. So I think having that patience has always been a challenge for me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, the second part being, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
Ooh, I have two parts to that.
Okay. I like it.
Because I'm
Two
a
parts to
split,
my
I'm a, I'm a
two-parter.
split, yeah, I'm a split personality, I guess you'd call it. One is managing and seeing success in your people, mentoring and really helping them to grow, and seeing their success, and not necessarily having to be a part of it, but basically really watching them grow successfully. And in our business, that is picking up new customers and driving market share through new customers. And so that to me it feels really good. And that's probably one of the things I enjoy the most. But the other one is doing those things myself, is having personal successes. So being a personal contributor is also very rewarding. So I get to do both. I'm very fortunate. A lot of sales managers they don't have customers. So they're working through others. I have always taken the notion of I'm always going to keep a customer or two or three, as many as I could keep, and continue to be a personal contributor, because it also helps me to understand what my people are dealing with on a daily basis, because I'm also dealing with that. And I think that's part of understanding what your as a leader, what your team is doing and how to manage through those situations.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just love how well that transitions to my next question, which is how important is mentoring in your industry? And who are your mentors, and who do you have any mentees? And I think the answer to that is yes. And how do you navigate those relationships successfully?
So well, again, I am I'm a different person here. I do not have a mentor per se.
Okay.
I do not. I've had some great bosses that have given me snippets, and I've taken a little bit of each of theirs. But none of them have really mentored me. I'm a little too independent for that. Sorry, it's just who I am. On the flip side, I mentor quite a few people and have over the years. Um, and so uh, I think it's very important. If you're open to a mentor, I think you should take it. I'm just profusely independent, and so it plays to who I am. But on the same side, it could be hurting me in my career. So because not using your mentor to help catapult you to other opportunities potentially, I think that may have been it. But at the same time, I love mentoring people, but I also have a thing about respect, and I haven't found anybody in my career that I'm going, I really think that person, I really respect that person enough to mentor me. So that's because there's great snippets of each of these individuals, but I come from an old school. Our industry is a bit old school, where people are very harsh, and and it's a bit of a grind. And so when you were in those areas with the grind, you kind of lose respect for people at times because they don't know how to deal through that grind. The industry has changed and it has gotten much better. So I will say, if you're looking at consumer packaged goods, it's a much softer industry than it was when I started. Yes, it was pretty tough. But at this point, I think my favorite parts of the day are getting to mentor people, and I have about 8 or 9 here at Spindrift that I mentor. Yes. So, and continue to. And we don't have a formal mentoring program. So they've approached me and asked for that. And so I continue to do so on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's great that, they feel comfortable to come up and ask for that, right? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Well, so, as part of your bio and just, in general, there's, you talk a lot about those big successes, and then meeting certain goals and, managing these large accounts.
Customers.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So, what do you think what do you think, is the best strategies for making these big goals, or for setting goals and reaching them, in your industry and in sales,
In
or
general.
yeah.
Yeah. In general. Yeah. Um, I would say that don't be afraid to um, put the goals out there in front of yourself, and be steady and in your work effort, and meaning that if you understand how to achieve the goal, um, great, start to strive towards that. Be flexible because things change on the fly. Um, in our industry, we have certain retailers that just change buyers, we call them, or category managers every 2 years. So you may establish this great relationship with somebody, and boom, that person's moved to a different part of they get promoted, they move to a different category. So you've said, wow, I've spent this 2 years building this relationship, and they're gone. and 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 I think that's the one thing, because I have had in a lot of different roles and a lot of different companies, that creating a quick bond with somebody has been a strength of mine, and being able to at least create a trust. I'm not saying we're best friends. That doesn't happen overnight, but that they can trust me to do so. I'd say whether you're in sales or anything, if you're going to talk to people, or just in general try to achieve bigger things, um, again, put yourself in that person's seat. Understand what they're dealing with. The more you can understand what they deal with and how they're trying to build their business or whatever they're trying to accomplish, I think it really helps to understand them, and just you can tailor your message to them, your communication to them better. And so when you're able to do so, you see results quicker, versus saying, I'm just pushing information on you. You need to do this. And they just look at you with this stone face going, why? You don't understand what I'm doing. You're trying to sell me this, and I don't even really care about that. That doesn't really concern me. So there's a lot of that goes on in the world. So really identifying and understanding who your customer is, or who you're trying to influence. Make sure you put yourself in their shoes. Um, so I'd say a couple of those things have been very helpful over time. Um, and try to find things that you really like doing, selling. If you're in sales, you should probably like what you're selling. You don't have to love it, but you should at least like it or respect it, versus saying, well, I sell this, but I don't really like what I'm
Mm.
selling.
Yeah, well, I've seen you taking a couple swigs of the Spindrift, so I know you like it.
I do. I like a lot of beverages, though. I mean, but I was in the mood, and it's not because I'm doing this today. It's just I was in the mood. I'm going to grab it. So yeah, I do like it. And some things I have sold, I wasn't a huge proponent of, but I will say this: I believe in it, and that's a difference too. You don't have to like what you're selling yourself, but if you believe in what the message is and what you're selling, it does come off a lot more authentically. And you can be a male person selling makeup if you believe in it, if you believe that the makeup works and it helps people with what they're trying to accomplish. So just be authentic about that. Pick things that you do believe in, and you don't necessarily have to believe in the oh, the company culture and all, getting into all those types of things, as much as is the product that you're selling, does it really work? And does it feel through the brand ethos? Is it really identifying with what it is? That makes life a lot easier. I mean, it's obvious you believe in CSULB. I do, right? Or
Yeah.
LBSU now, which um, so it's very easy for me to tell people, well, yeah, you should apply and go to school there. You should look at going to school at that there. It's a great environment. It's a great so it's a lot easier when you truly believe it versus, yeah, it's just kind of here's what I got today. Here's what I'm doing. Okay. So I think that genuineness is really important. And then just, believe in what you're doing.
Coming back to that authenticity.
Yep. There's a lot of that with me.
I love that. Well, one of the big buzz things that are happening across so many different industries, and it feels like it's impacting every industry, no matter where you are, is the rise in AI and in different emerging technologies. So I was hoping to, pick your brain about, what do you think about AI and other technologies like that? Are it good thing, bad thing, useful, the worst thing ever?
Yeah, I'm a proponent. So I do manage e-commerce. And so we have the AI has been alive and well. Anyway, Amazon is a huge customer of ours, and I've been a part of that from the beginning when we opened Amazon. So I have seen it and I see it every day. So um, excuse me. I believe that there are great places and great uses for AI. I also believe that people writing papers with AI is really just lazy. It's just pure lazy. So now if you're writing small emails and using ChatGPT for small things, great. But again, I still think it loses its back to authenticity. And
Mhm.
I stick with authenticity through everything and being truly organic. So that's where I think AI loses its place, is when you don't have that personal connection. But if you're doing data analysis, of course we should be using AI. Why wouldn't we? It makes a lot of sense as long as somebody's keeping control and watching over what's going on and really making sure you that the results that you've analyzed are what you were looking for and they're true. So I am a proponent of AI in particular cases. And in our industry, e-commerce uses it for sure. Logistics, there are a lot of opportunities for AI, from taking a truckload of something and getting it to another space. There could be a bid option for the lowest price on the trucking. Then you could have the best route depending on, I mean, there's a lot of different elements that could go into logistics for us. And I think that's a place we'll start to see it. Finance, there's obviously opportunities as well if you can use the AI tools in finance for analysis. Are there things we're missing as humans that AI could find for us? So those are two places I would say yes, but I don't want to use a bot to sell products. I don't think that really works for me. So that's where I am on AI.
All right. Sounds consistent.
Yes.
Um,
Well, let me ask you, where are you on AI?
oh, I've heard so many different answers from so many different professions. It's honestly just so interesting to see everyone's take on it. I think I'm with you, like there's a time and a place that makes sense. And, yeah, no, term papers don't do that. But, sometimes
Right.
sometimes you have, that those emails you need to get out, those invitations, the social media,
Sure.
and like,
That makes sense because that's it's a formish letter. So I totally get that. I'm with you. I've seen a lot of the different um, ads recently when I'm watching finance news and Grammarly, and it's oh, look at this new Grammarly you can use, and they're showing, look, I did this and I was able to get all these emails out. You're like, oh, okay, but were they all form, and why are you sending those if they're just form anyway? So I wonder.
right. No, for
Right,
sure.
versus, yes, I'm sending an invitation to somebody. Okay, I get that, but especially what you do. But really, you're going to write that letter to that person at that company. Okay. Using
Oh,
Grammarly. Okay. Whatever works for you.
yeah. Well, surprising enough, we are coming up on time, and it
Sure.
always surprises me. But I want to ask a nice little ending question here, which I think is just fun. And that is, if you could go back in time with a time machine or a magic wand or what have you, and find yourself when you were about to graduate from CSULB, and
Ooh,
yourself one piece of advice, what would it
way back when. Way back when. Wow. Okay. So I've given this advice to young students and daughters who have graduated from colleges. And I'd say the one piece of advice is that all those great things you learned in college were great and important, but the first probably 3 to 5 years of your career are not going to be glamorous. They're not going to be all the things that you thought they would be. You're not going to make millions of dollars just coming out of college, and you're going to have to grind for a while and put in your time. But if you put in your time, do the hard work, and prove who you are, you can be very successful in life.
Okay.
That would be my tip to any student coming out, because I thought it was going to be great. I'm going to come out and I'm going to have this. Oh my gosh, I'm in a company car and I'm driving around calling on grocery stores. Well, my wife, a great example, my wife was a merchandiser for Coke out of college because we graduated in 1990 and the economy was tough. And she put in the time. She was up at 4 a.m. in the morning with a college degree, building displays, doing that hard work where you hear kids go now, oh, that's too hard. Oh, wow. Well, it paid off because it matriculated into a job where she went to Lego and sold building blocks, toys, because she had that hard experience. And she worked a very tough route for a while, and then she got promoted. But it wasn't very long on either of those jobs. And by the time she quit, she was their highest person she's the highest female in the company from, and she had managed people, managed national accounts. She had done all these roles before she decided to retire, and she wanted to raise our children at that point. And she's back in the workforce, of course. She decided she couldn't stay home after the kids got to a certain age. I'm not doing this anymore. I got to go find something to do. But she grinded it out in a tough time and made it work. So I would say, regardless of your industry, it's going to be a grind for 3 to 5 years, and you have to expect that. And don't sit and say, "Well, the degree wasn't worth it. This degree didn't help me." It does. It does. A gentleman who I was mentoring almost I'm going into entrepreneurship. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Great. How are you going to fundraise? Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Of course you don't. Okay, so I walked him through all these different things, and he was going to quit. He's like, he was just done with his junior year. I'm quitting school. I'm just going to start my own business. I said, you can't do that. So I held him off. He finished finance degree as well. He's grinding it out, but he actually got himself a really good job. He's actually a buyer in the consumer packaged goods industry, which I had no idea he would go there. I thought he would start up and go. He's like, no, I'm going to go learn a little bit more. And I went, now you're listening. Now
Yeah.
you're thinking, because you want to start a company, go learn how to buy, go learn how to sell, because you want to build something. And I think getting a great foundation, and I think he took that one. I do feel great about it. He actually approached me at a trade show recently. He walked up, went, oh my gosh. And he had his badge on and was like, wow, you got a real job. I thought I'm going to start my company. And he still wants to. He's still going to be an entrepreneur, but he figured, he says, you know what? I need to get a base of money. I need to get some experience. This is a great way for me to do that. So it materialized for him. And I think he's going to go on and be very successful. And he's a Long Beach State graduate. So
Yeah, no. It's a grind, and learn what you can.
yes,
Awesome.
it's a grind, learn
Well,
what you can. Sorry.
And I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. I think that there is a lot of great stuff in here that folks can get and to help them along their way. And so I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank
For
you for
all of
having me. It's enjoyable, very fun.
good, good. For all of you who've joined us today, thank you so much. We hope that you enjoyed yourself as much as we did. And again, this video will be available to you on demand on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. And feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Feel free to follow us on social media. We are at CSULB Alumni on all the different platforms. And make sure to follow us so that way you don't miss the next industry chat or the next thing that we're doing. So yeah, and Ed, if folks wanted to get in touch with you, maybe continue the conversation or try and establish that authentic
A
relationship,
network?
a network. How might they reach out to you?
The best and easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. It's just Ed Thomas, and you'll find me. And then if you want to email me, I'll give you my email address. It's ethomas3256@yahoo.com. So ethomas3256@yahoo if you'd like to connect. Thanks. Thanks for having me today. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to you. Thank you to everyone. And until next time, have a good one.
Bye.